Welcome to the Planet Report, where I'll be taking you through all the latest in climate and sustainability news. I'm your host, Vivien Williams. Joining us this week is Professor Frank Sesno, a professor at the School of Media and Public Affairs at the George Washington University. He's also the executive director for the Alliance for a Sustainable Future, as well as the founder of Planet Forward, a nationwide environmental publication, and a lot more. So you're a busy man. Thank you for making the time to meet with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, let's dive right in. We have very limited time, so I wanted to start with the incoming Trump administration. As we've seen, his policies have already impacted the climate world substantially, from pulling out of the Paris Agreement to withdrawing support from research even mentioning climate. So what does a second Trump term mean for climate action, and how do you think the climate movement sort of pivots from here?
I think it's going to be a very challenging second term. There are certain terms, as you say, that we can barely even mention, at least in the circles of the administration. But that's not going to change reality. It's not going to make fewer storms, less heat, less drought, less extreme weather, less coastal erosion. These problems are here, and they're getting worse, and they are made worse largely by climate change. So calling it by another name or stopping the research or slowing the research does not change the challenge. So what I think is going to happen, and it already is certain organizations, and this includes researchers and scholars here at GW and other universities, it includes the private sectors, are trying to find other ways to talk about these problems that aren't going to go away. So instead of talking about climate change, maybe we talk about community resiliency and how do communities stand up to these challenges. That means preparing for them. That means adapting to the changes that are taking place, trying to mitigate them, make them, if it's possible, to slow down the impact. So one is that people are going to have to figure out different ways to frame, to craft their message. The other thing is that some organizations are just going to see the funding stop, and they're going to have to go elsewhere. So that may be to wealthy individuals who believe in this kind of thing and want to support the activities, the research. It may be companies or foundations that still believe in it and want to step in when the government steps out. I think at the end of the day, this, I hope anyway, but I really believe it, will be a moment. It may be a long moment, and it may be a very costly moment. But we will come back to this because we have to, and because we have scientists and businesses and students and young people who know that this is real, it's not going away, and we cannot shirk our responsibilities, even though people don't want to talk about it at the governmental level right now.
So you think as the administration continues to pool funding, more like private donors and small donors will step in?
Well, I don't know how many small donors it will be, and maybe.
That's
and
tough.
there can be campaigns for that. What we have seen in the past, when environmental and other things are suddenly under siege, people who believe in the cause and in the changes that need to be made or the research that needs to happen will step in. Caution, though. There is almost no way that I could imagine wealthy individuals, philanthropists and others stepping in to fill the gap of the billions of dollars of research that the federal government has sponsored. And so if they really pull back from all of this, if they walk away from the science, that will be very damaging and very destructive.
Right, and we would lose a lot of time and with climate
We'll lose
initiatives.
precious time because we know that the change is happening. In some places it's accelerating, and we can be hitting tipping points from which it's very difficult to recover.
So earlier you mentioned framing these climate conversations. This brought me back to something you said during your recent Sesno series with former New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu. So when you guys were discussing climate rhetoric, you said, quote, "Fear-mongering is wrong, and the left has been driving some of that. Many climate groups want to reframe." So how do you think politicians can best walk that line between, quote unquote, fear-mongering and addressing climate urgency?
It's a great question, and I think it really gets to making it real. So an example is, a few years ago, we had 4 mayors on stage, and we talked to them about sustainability and how do you speak to lower income communities in your cities who are maybe principally worried about putting food on their table, the jobs they have, their kids, their education, all that, and for whom sustainability, frankly, is a luxury. And they said, well, what we try to do is not make it a luxury, not make it about hugging trees, but about saying to them, for example, we can come to your home and do an energy audit and save you money. We're going to plant trees on your street, not to absorb carbon dioxide, but to provide more shade so it's cooler on a hot summer day, so making it real. We had a farmer come and speak to us. And he was a fourth-generation Maryland farmer. He said, I don't need to talk about climate change. I'm just telling you the rains have changed. And he had to re-berm and put new drainage in his property so that the topsoil was not running off when he got these, what would have become these very sudden downpours that are now more common. So I think what has to happen, and what will happen, is a more direct connection to people, to their communities, to what is happening, and the changes that some of them that are very good about inventing the future.
Right, so more at a community level, less at a federal level.
Community level, less at a federal level, perhaps. We can't walk away from federal responsibilities in this sort of global challenge that we confront. But what we can try to do is to put it in terms that people who are busy people, who are trying to put food on the table and take their kids to and from school and get their homework done each day, can understand and can relate to their own lives. There are those in the environmental movement. There's Project Drawdown, for example, and they say that we, the environmental movement, have put this too much in stark terms and sacrifice terms, in terms of sort of the war on climate change and setting this up as a battle. We need to find more and better ways to talk to people in a more relatable and positive construct.
Absolutely, and I think I wanted to bring it back to something you said. You said hopefully just a moment, maybe a long moment.
Maybe a long moment.
So we've seen in this moment thousands of workers from the Department of Energy have laid off and hundreds from the EPA have been laid off. Do you think that those jobs will fill up again in the future with the new administration, or how do you think that reframes?
It's really hard to say. This is why, this may be a moment and maybe a long moment, right? I liken this situation to the California, the Los Angeles wildfires. We have wildfires burning right now. Eventually the fires will go out and we'll rebuild. But how long will it take? How much is actually damaged in the process? We don't know. What's the hardest part in some of these jobs that are being lost, and some of them maybe can be lost, and there's efficiencies. There's too much for us to know. We don't even know.
Right.
We don't have that level of detail. What we do know, though, is that there are excellent and experienced scientists with years of research and experience who are getting thrown out. We know that there are databases that we don't have access to any longer because of some of the steps that the administration has taken. Whether you agree with climate change or not, whether you agree with some of the steps that have been taken in recent years, you don't just obliterate research and data because you don't agree with it. That's valuable information that should be there for everybody. And that's the thing that concerns me the most, is turning your back on the research and the science that's out there because there's something in the message you don't like.
Right, and it's becoming politicized, really.
Highly politicized. And again, there are plenty of places to debate and discuss, whether it's how much money gets invested in electric vehicle infrastructure, or whether solar farms are better than wind farms or better than nuclear plants. I mean, these are all legitimate talking points and debates. But what's not legitimate is suppressing fact, turning your back on science, and saying, because we don't like something, we're going to push it off center stage. In fact, we're going to take it down altogether. That's very troubling.
Well, I think that's a great place to close it off. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But thank you so much again for joining me on the show. And to everyone watching, stay tuned for upcoming segments of the Planet Report. Thank you.